Hello, Facebook. Hello, America. Hello, the world. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Dan Davis, editor-in-chief of The Fabricator, joined by Tim Heston, my colleague at The Fabricator, senior editor. We're here to preview the December 2021 issue, not the December 2020 issue, as I wrote down on my notes, of The Fabricator. And, as we come to the end of the year, we'll kind of chat about what's ahead for 2022 as well, and we'll save that conversation for a little bit at the end. But Tim, I know in kind of speaking before we went live that you worked on a story involving the company Tigmaster Precision Fabrication, I think, in Michigan. And why don't you highlight some of the interesting tidbits you picked up while pulling that story together?
Well, the story began as a kind of case study on boosting what I called laser cutting velocity, through the machine, but also through the shop. It started out as a laser cutting head story, but broadened out to something that included the storage and how to manage remnants, especially because this job shop in Michigan, it resembles a lot of job shops, but has its own unique story to tell. And the fact that when you step on that shop floor, you see, you could see a range of different kinds of ferrous and non-ferrous material, obviously in different areas of the shop, but also 5-inch plate, 10-inch plate, even 13-inch plate being cut on a flame table. So it's also a heavy-duty plate shop there to serve. And they also serve the die repair industry that's been in that area of Michigan for years. So it was kind of a fascinating story. They've come up with a manual storage solution that with a bit of software attached to it that allows them to really take advantage of how they handle remnants, which is such a huge issue, specifically for a lot of material that they may never use for 6 or 8 months. But boy, they need material, and because especially nowadays, dear God, when are you going to get some of this material? So they were actually building an extra warehouse of raw stock to make sure they've got it on hand. But the remnant management has been pretty extraordinary there, and they keep it organized in slots and lift it up and can run various sheets, and it's organized in their software how they handle the remnants. So there's a lot of reader takeaway value there, I think.
And this is not necessarily something connected to their blank processing. It kind of stands alone.
Well, the storage solution does. It's lean manufacturing products, which is in Wisconsin. So it's a manual storage solution, but that complements the fact that they can dovetail that into, all right, we can put remnants on top of certain sheets. We do not have to store them vertically and have them haphazardly stored around. So they can nest tighter. Some shops I know nest loosely because when are we going to need this material again? And it costs more money to actually store and track this material. Well, material price going up, material availability issues, that's different now. So they're trying to nest tighter. So that's kind of what that story is about.
Yeah, in reading it, the presence of those high-powered lasers seemed to be kind of a continuing theme in a lot of stuff we're writing about nowadays, and it really exacerbates a bad situation if you have one. In this case, probably material management. It's something we're going to continue to see as we move forward, I imagine.
Yeah, and I think that dovetails into another story that we had or we're having. I guess it's shipped out the door now, but in December on Steve Zario, who works closely with FMA. He's a consultant. I wrote a great story on identifying your fabricating niche, and identified the difference between tactical and strategic improvements. Obviously, baseline is operational improvements, including lean manufacturing. Everybody's going to do that. 5S is just absolutely fundamental to most shops. But then you go above that to tactical, which means his definition is doing the same thing better. So you buy a, say, ultra high powered laser to tackle more of a market. What makes those purchases the most effective is if they're tied to a strategic plan, and the strategic plan brings you up. There's more opportunity value, and it strengthens your company. Does this make the company stronger? An amazing equipment purchase may boost your short-term revenue, but does it build a stronger foundation for the company?
Right.
Too often, and it's about looking for long-term growth and long-term sustainability versus just meeting next month's numbers, which of course a lot of the OEMs that our shops serve kind of deal with that quarterly number rush all the
Right.
time. So
yeah, I was talking with a fabricator a couple of weeks ago for a story I'm working on, and their whole business is built around keeping up with these higher wattages of laser cutting machines, because they find the more cutting edge they are, their customers will seek them out because they don't want to invest in the higher wattage machines. So if they are able to kind of supply this guy as part of their supply chain with work, it keeps the word out. He doesn't have to advertise. and that way it keeps the heat off them from maybe having, somebody having to write that check for a new capital investment. And literally this dude went from, what was it? He went from 10 to 15 in 14 months. And it wasn't a side-by-side thing. He replaced his 14-month-old laser right after bringing in his his 10 kilowatt right after he brought in his 15 kilowatt. So yeah, it's amazing stuff. You talk about information delivery, truthfulness in the numbers. Making sure. Before we got on, you had mentioned a shop where they had gone paperless, and how once you print out that production order, it's immediately dated. There's no telling what would happen. And in December, I did a small story on Ultrafit, which is not a small company. It's rather large, 230 people, 63 work cells where they're doing all type of different tube fabrications, mostly for the transportation industry, automotive industry. And they had an issue as they would go, it's much more high volume production than maybe some of our job shops are used to. But they would have some jobs that would overlap on shifts. People would lose count, part count, totally manual. People would steal labels from printing machines just because they couldn't find their own. It was mayhem. Life in a fab shop's mayhem already. If people are just totally making up their own rules, it just contributes to it. And this is a company, I think I have it here. It added a quarter of their employees just within the last 7 years. So incredible growth. And they found their solution to this issue just by going back to their ERP supplier, Epicore, and using a module they had that existed already. So A, it was available to them. B, they didn't have to customize it. And I've heard so many horror stories around shops trying to get software to fit their unique situation, and when it comes to later upgrades of that software, it's just mayhem on its own. So they use this software. They set up part counting on these different machines, and they were able to gain like a 17% increase in productivity, which doesn't sound like a ton, but when you're talking about a organization this size, it's really kind of helped them move forward. And as we were talking about earlier, this is industry 4.0, the very beginning. That it's small things. It doesn't necessarily have to be big things. And I know we just finished having industry 4.0 web conference through our friends with the Fabricators and Manufacturers Association. So it's stuff that shops can do. It doesn't necessarily have to involve the consultant and thousands in outlay.
Right. And that conference, included both shops that on the bleeding edge with there's Oshcut, OSH Cut out in Utah. I believe they call themselves Oshcut, excuse me, where it's totally automated. We covered them in April in Fabricator, if you want to look in the archives on thefabricator.com, as well as Amtex Precision, which is we're actually covering in January, which does nuts and bolts paperless solution. And what Amtex is dealing with, and another shop looking at now, we had our structural steel fabrication supplement with the December issue. and I covered a shop in New England, and the story's called "A Dying Church No Longer."
Right.
Because the owner actually, this is Osceola Iron Works, and it's a structural and miscellaneous steel fabricator, dealt with a lot of bridge fab and bridge repair work. But the average tenure there was 20, 30 years. I mean, everybody had been there for so long. So there was deep knowledge, and it was a great culture because the ownership, a lot of times you see ownership where if the owners leave, there's no, the knowledge level is shallow, where this shop is incredibly deep. But it also created kind of an insular environment where nothing changed for years and years. And so when the next generation came on board, they had to bring it to the 21st century, get the shop email. This is 2010, so get the shop email, get the shop a website, and then specifically hire new blood, which is what the article goes through, as well as upgrade equipment so that they're literally not going through and doing manual mag drill stuff that took forever. But because they were in a specific market niche, the demand didn't require it. That's what makes this industry so fascinating. You've got one end where they have just amazing automation because the market demands it. But then, like this company, this was a specialty bridge fabricator. And years ago, I wrote a story about a dumbwaiter manufacturer, so specialized.
Right.
And the drawings didn't change very often. And so they just got into CAD in 2010. It was amazing. Like, really? Right. They were pushing lead way into the 2000s. So it's just a broad range. But,
do you find in that structural steel space that, maybe the time has come where you'll see more shops adopting that newer technology, kind of almost being forced to?
Well, I mean, now there are two ends of that. There's the very small shop in structure fab, but then there are all sorts of, and of course, Tekla has permeated a lot of the industry, as well as a lot of other software platforms. And that's actually the cover story of the structural fab supplement, is how software has really empowered the detailer, and how the detailer has become more important than ever. And the challenge that creates when there's a detailer shortage, and we kind of cover the detailer shortage, and how not only in detailing but in connection design, and all the waste that can happen if those things don't come together. And then at the same time, that is dovetailed into a rather extensive article that was based off in a great AISC conference that I attended last year, or 2 years ago at this point, but it's still current because I talked to the lawyer who made the presentation about contracts and subcontracts. And, it kind of I came up with this story idea initially and wanted to pursue this presentation conference because it was just great. Because several years ago, I ran into a structural fabricator at FabTech, perusing the structural fab portion of the hall floor. I said, what do you hate most about your job? And he said, lawyers and paperwork. It's such a confusing web of supply, demand, and you've got different subcontractors, fly-by-night operations, lawsuits flying about. It's just a crazy mess. That differs state by state. And so that article delves into some useful tips that kind of builds a foundation, so that when you have a smooth product, smooth contracts in structural fab, everything else can happen more smoothly. Ideally, nothing's perfect, but yeah.
So that's our supplement that accompanied the December 2021 issue. So look out for that. Also in that issue, you pulled together an industry forecast for 2022, and I don't think anyone would be surprised about some of your findings. Since then, we have a new Omicron variant of COVID, which I think people are aware of, and I, fingers crossed, thinking that the people being vaccinated and maybe just proper controls on flights and people entering and testing might have this a little bit more under control than we did early in the pandemic. What else can metal fabricators expect in 2022 from your vantage point?
Well, the forecast I put together is all wrong. No, I'm kidding. It's not wrong. When Omicron came out, like, great, it's all going. Oh, man. No, actually, looking at the forecast, this is actually based off Chris Keel, who's the economic analyst for the Fabricators Manufacturers Association. he actually puts together monthly what he calls the Armada Strategic Intelligence System, or ASIS. And he puts it together with another consultant. He's based in Kansas City, and there's another consultant around that area that he works with to put together specific numbers, sector-specific numbers on fabricating metal products, electronic equipment, ag, machinery, and of course automotive, and put together specific numbers, growth forecasts for each. And we detail them in the issue and kind of give readers a hint of what they could experience on a monthly basis with Chris Keel. The issue kind of has a holistic approach to this, because in my biz talk, I cover, and again, Steve Zario gave a great webinar on this for FMA on the financial ratios and benchmarking survey that happens every year at FMA. And it's a very deep survey, has a small sample size, but each participant literally spends hours digging into their balance sheet and financial statements to provide this data to us so we can get a view of what's going on. So that's why it comes out late, and it's old data. It's 2020. It's 2020 fiscal year, but it gives us an idea of, all right, this is what 2020 was like. And average, let me pull up the numbers here. Average profit was 4%. So that was average the profit that a lot of shops had to deal with. There's a wide range. It's specifically because, this is a small company business. If one company is a particular, and with high revenue concentration, so if they have a really winning customer, you can have an incredibly profitable year. You lose a customer, you can have incredibly negative years. So it's a wide range, but it gives a sense of where shops are. This was before or just during the material uptick. And so material was still about 34% of sales average. Again, a very broad range, but the average is 34% among all participants. And direct labor about 17%. So that leaves just about half. Direct labor and material, it's all eaten up before you even reach any kind of overhead, indirect labor, and SG&A costs, sales and general administrative costs for a fab shop. So it's a lean environment, and let's see how they and so seeing how they get into 2021 and 2022. From anecdotally, what I'm seeing is just, especially some shops, they took advantage of prices in 2020 to invest in technology. Right. Especially the more progressive operations, and they had to speed that order to cash cycle to get more sales dollars per employee, because they literally can't find employees. So right. Each person has to produce more, and they got to give the technology to them to be able to do that. And the forecast next year overall is pretty positive. Some sectors, aerospace is going to be flying high, according to Chris. Machinery especially stands out. The machinery sector is probably going to be driving a lot of activity in metal fabrication because everybody else, metal fabricators are automating, and so is everybody else. And so the demand for that, the one sticking point is the supply chain, obviously. So MEC had a conference call in late November that I reported on, where they're just incredibly strong outlook, but they just are waiting for their customers to have for their supply chain, right. The supply chain choke at their customers, not necessarily MEC, because they have a local supply chain. As long as it's local and domestic, it's right. Pretty steady. But boy, customers waiting for electronics overseas, those dang microchips. Yeah. So it's an issue. So
for MEC, just to let people know, they're Mayville, Wisconsin, one of the largest right. Contract manufacturer job shop operations in the U.S., multiple locations, and what they go through is probably representative of a lot of people in the industry, both big, medium, and small. Right. So just from a material perspective, looking at 2022, the folks over at Steel Market Update kind of took an opportunity in December to take a look back at all that had occurred, and if there was any year to do a year in review for steel, it probably was 2021. Mm-hmm. But this was a year where the benchmark for hot rolled steel quadrupled from less than 500 tons for hot rolled coil to almost $1,955 per ton. That obviously eats up a significant portion of fabricators' budget. They're looking to 2022, and I think most fabricators, from what I've heard, have seen a price decrease in late November that probably will continue. The issue becomes volatility, though, in the first quarter of 2022. Imports are now coming back into the U.S. because steel prices have been so high. So even with the tariffs, they're affordable. And certain countries now, particularly the EU, recently had some not so much tariffs, but caps put on imports coming in. So their imports are coming in without the tariffs now. Later, any new capacity, steelmaking capacity, likely won't hit until later in the year, according to what steel market update experts have been writing about. So good news overall, prices are going down, but if you're trying to plan, I don't think this is any surprise to fabricators. Planning in this industry is difficult to begin with.
Right.
So, those, as you described, those that are able to get it in and get it out probably have less to worry about than those that actually have it sitting around for a long time.
Right.
But
and the industry is realizing too that machines are only part of the problem as far as productivity of a certain machine. You can buy an incredibly productive machine, but if you can't get fork truck drivers,
right,
you can't get them out the door. If somebody calls in sick, why is this material sitting here? So you can save hours in the machine, but then days because you can't find people to move the material downstream. Which brings us to our cover story for December, which is the implementation of automated guided vehicles and autonomous mobile robotics in metal fabrication. It's just starting. You see some shops, a lot of shops in Europe doing it. Some shops in the United States, a few shops are doing it. Some I've talked to off the record, they have some great things to say, but they didn't want to publicize what they were doing, obviously.
Right.
But we have some showrooms out there, and obviously you go to FabTech and you see, even some booths, they had AGVs saying this is what you can do from the laser to the brake.
Right.
And then the kind of the ideal fab shop of the future, bringing AGVs and AMRs into the market. It's not as straightforward because it's a job shop. So there's so many so many different variables in job shops. But as sources told me, if you focus on kind of do the 80-20 rule, the 80% value, 20% is going to be, well, don't worry about all that. There's so much variation that let's deal with the core 80%. Which again goes back to identifying your market niche elsewhere in the show, is like in the magazine. If you don't,
I know anybody in metals manufacturing, metals making, forklifts scare these safety professionals. They don't like them. I've been in shops where head on a swivel. If it's the middle of the day and things are hopping, people are either honking their horn because I'm in their way with the forklift, or I'm kind of just standing on a pallet, which is just verboten in many shops. But my brother works in a paper mill in Port Hudson, Louisiana, and they actually have the AGVs there. We're talking about it over the Thanksgiving break, and believe me, he's I don't associate him as being the most sophisticated person in manufacturing, but just to be able to share this future perhaps opportunity for fabricators when it comes to automated material handling is kind of interesting, and it's already being put in place where I didn't expect it. So the future's here for many places.
Yeah, they had a panel discussion at FabTech of all places. Of AMRs, autonomous mobile robots. You'd think it would be at ProMat or another material handling show. No, they're at FabTech because there's so much need. There's there's a potential because you literally can't find people, and it's nobody, and I think somebody told me during the story, it's like, it's about career aspirations. Do you want to be a fork truck driver for life? Okay. It's hard to find people like that.
Leave that open for us retirees who are looking for something to do.
Exactly. That's right.
Killing ourselves with customers or something like that.
That's right. Once they automate writing, or something.
Adobe Editor is right around the corner. So I will plug, topics like this and learning from your peers. In my editorial for December, I gave a plug to the upcoming FMA annual meeting. It's an excellent opportunity for people to both large and small, and that was kind of the theme of the editorial. Just because you're a large company, it doesn't mean that you can't learn from others and just meet people. And I think when we talk about a worker shortage, I also think there's a talent shortage. And if you can find somebody who has leadership skills, able to communicate with shop floor and front office and customers, these are the type of people attending this conference. And
Right.
I think it's an ample opportunity to meet people, learn from them, and just frankly, share stories with other people that understand what's happening, not
Right.
not your spouse who's just rolling their eyes because they want to hear another story about, Jim's always in the coffee room and he should be operating, the laser cutting machine or something like that.
One shop owner recently told me, you know what? There's a curiosity shortage. Yeah,
Yeah.
he called it so that's why I say, that's what's so great about the FMA annual meeting, which thankfully is back live next year.
Right.
Is you're around a bunch of curious people who all have the same problems, and so
I think that I kind of equate it to food. The gap between the best taco in the world and the worst taco in the world is not that great. And the way I see this industry is that the people who may be at a mech, with multiple locations, close, probably a little bit easily over 350 million a year in annual sales, probably way above 400 million. I don't have the figures in front of me. They have so much in common with that 10-man shop. And frankly, some of those 10-man shops are running sophisticated equipment, and they're punching above their weight in terms of sales per employee. So there's so much variety in this industry. I think it behooves all in just to kind of take a break and hang out with your peers. And you can find out more information about that at www.fmamfg.com .org. Always do that. fmamfg.org. So also in December we have a story on profile of electric brake advancements. Our colleague Kate Bachman kind of took a look at that. Worth your time. And a simple story about a metal roofing manufacturer that when I was talking with him, he goes, "Y'all do stories on a company like me?" And I'm like, "That's the universe we work in." And he had kind of introduced a folding machine to his operation and really kind of picked it up. And in all honesty, once again, an example of technology separating a company from his local competitors. So look forward to that. I think that's it.
We got a comment
Oh, we got a comment?
from Nick Martin.
Oh, there. How you doing,
hey,
Nick?
Nick, how you doing?
Our shop may be too small, but I can see this as a valuable resource to some of our customers. But we will always automate when we can, so who knows when the near future will hold.
Yeah. So Nick Martin, he writes a blog for us on the fabricator.com. And, a great example of a column that I love reading, and I'm sure our fabricators would too, but people outside the industry, I think, would look upon it as kind of some bewilderment because it's just, it's the world in which you live. But Nick made a comment about his shop maybe not having the most advanced cutting edge technology, but there may be an opportunity down the road. And frankly, as we look to 2022 and beyond, there's a lot of opportunity, and there's so much opportunity because the fabricating base, particularly in the U.S., you can say North America, is dominated by small to medium-sized companies that have the flexibility that these larger ones simply don't. And they're able to respond in so many different ways, and Tim covers it every month. So, hopefully, once again, I'll make a plug. If anyone out there has, even in the smallest shops, if you're doing something different, let us know. We'd be love to share the story and let others learn from it.
That's right.
So I think that's all I wanted to cover. I plug for annual meeting. The magazine should be out around next week, I would say, about Wednesday or so. So if you don't, give us a ring. We'll make sure you get a copy. Digital edition will be out around the 15th, I think. And wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, stay safe, and we'll see you in 2022. Oh, that was the other thing. We ran late because this thing is supposed to start at noon, but I have to reserve the office in which we're shooting my portion of it at 11 a.m. So we started, someone thought it was 11 a.m., but for in the future, these things will always probably be at around noon central. So apologies on that one. So thanks a lot and have a good one. See ya.
Thank you.